All right, let's talk about CBOs versus ABOs. It's 2026 and I'm still getting questions on whether you should be using campaign budgets or ad set budgets for your testing. And so in today's video, I'm gonna explain it to you in the most simple terms possible and as quickly as possible so that you can get on with your testing. So without further ado, let's jump into it. All right, guys, let's get right to business. So let's talk about the difference between campaign budgets and ad set budgets. So we are at the campaign level. So you can see in the top left-hand corner, this little folder icon, that means you're at the campaign level. The 4 squares, that's an ad set. And then these are ads. Okay, so when you set up a campaign, you have a choice to make. Are you gonna use campaign budgets or ad set budgets? So I'm gonna talk to you about each one and the pros and cons. Okay, so let's first start with campaign budgets. What does that mean? So when you choose campaign budget, and let's say you decide to do $100 a day, for example, that means that you're giving $100 a day to this campaign, and Meta is going to decide how much each one of these ad sets is going to get of your daily budget per day. So if you have $100 a day, these 3 ad sets here are going to be competing for spend every day. Okay, and so what happens is Meta will skew the spend towards the one that it thinks is going to give you the best results. Now, Meta is not always right. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. I compare using campaign budgets to driving a car in automatic. Okay, it's going to shift the gears for you. Sometimes it's going to skew the spend towards things that are giving you great results. So the thing that's giving you the best results will get the most spend. So whichever, maybe ad set 1 is giving you the best results, Meta's algorithm skews the spend towards ad set 1, and you're happy. Perfect. But in other cases, Meta's algorithm is not always correct, and it's going to skew the spend towards something that's giving you a terrible ROAS or a terrible CPA, and you need to step in and do something. Okay, so that can happen. So because these ad sets are algorithmically linked, they are competing for spend every single day, they kind of affect one another. So let's say you were to turn one of these off, well, that can actually throw off the balance of the others. So that is kind of one of the cons to CBOs or campaign budgets. They're a little precarious. Like what you do in one ad set could affect the other ad sets, and then that can have a domino effect and break the whole thing. Okay, so for me, that is a bit of a con. So this can help you avoid overspending on loser ad sets, but then it can also skew the spend towards something that's not working. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. I like to think of it as like if you're going to use campaign budgets, you're really trusting in the algorithm, right? You're putting your trust in the algorithm to do the right thing. Now, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, like we said. Other things about CBOs, I personally don't think it is a very scientific way of testing because you're not giving each ad set the exact same budget. Meta's going to skew it. So, you know, it's not like a perfect apples to apples test where like each ad set's getting $100 per day, for example, and then you can compare the results, right? So it may be a little bit more efficient in some cases, but it also is not like a perfectly clean test in my opinion. Now, CBOs can be great for testing multiple things at one time. So let's say that you are grouping different angles per ad set here. So like angle 1, angle 2, angle 3. Well, you can test all 3 of these angles with $100 a day and just let Meta decide which one is the best. So it's really up to you as to how much you want to trust the algorithm. If you do this and it works for you and you see that it's skewing the spend towards the right one, then perfect. You know, keep doing that. But if you see that it's not, it's having some bad behavior, it's skewing spends towards things that are giving you bad results, then maybe you switch to ad set budgets. So a few other points about campaign budgets. They can be a little bit tricky to optimize. I personally like to optimize them at the ad set level. And when I say optimize, I mean if I need to step in and turn one of these things off because they're not doing well, I do it at the ad set level and not at the ad level. And the reason is, if I were to turn off one of these ads, well, that can break the relationship between these 2 ads and kind of potentially ruin it, which can then skew the relationship between the different ad sets and throw off the entire campaign. Essentially, you can have a domino effect if you mess around with the ads. So to limit the variables, I like to optimize at the ad set level. So it's a little bit more advanced. You do need to kind of take a lot of things into account. I actually just made a video about how to optimize and what to think about. So check that video out if you haven't already. So essentially campaign budgets, they can be good, but they can also cause problems. So other things to consider with CBOs, I don't like to add new ad sets into an existing CBO or campaign budget campaign because number one, it can throw off the balance of what's going on in here. Whenever I use campaign budgets, I think about it as like an organism or as like a living thing with a balance. There's like an equilibrium to it. If you introduce a new ad set and the current ad sets are working, you can actually break the current ad sets by introducing a new thing. You throw off the balance of the whole thing. So that is like one of the drawbacks. So whenever I'm doing campaign budgets, if I want to test a new thing, I'm launching a completely new campaign. So it's in its own little environment and it's not going to throw off what's working. So those are the things that I think about when I think about campaign budgets. Now, let's talk about ad set budgets. So ad set budgets, first of all, there's this new checkbox here, which turns your ad set budget into a quasi campaign budget. So you can see it says, we'll share up to 20% of your ad set budget with other ad sets within this campaign when it's likely to improve performance. So it seems like Meta is moving us towards campaign budgets reluctantly. But anyways, if you're going to do ad set budgets, I definitely uncheck this because if it's checked, it's kind of like a mini campaign budget. So when I do ad set budgets, you're actually setting the budget at the ad set level. So instead of doing $100 at the top and letting Meta decide how much each one of these ad sets is going to get, you're actually telling Meta, okay, I want each one of these to spend $33. Let's just so it adds up to 100, right? Now each one is going to spend about $33 per day. And they're not competing for spend. So there's no like skewing of spend like the campaign budgets does. They're not algorithmically competing for spend. Each ad set is its own little thing, its own little island. Now, there's some pros and cons to this, right? So the pros are it's a more scientific way of testing. It's like, okay, you can do a proper apples to apples comparison where each thing gets the same amount of spend and you can just judge the metrics and see which one does best. Perfect. Now, it's not skewing spends. So you actually have to manually turn things off if they're not working. Okay, so you might overspend on losers. So that is kind of an issue. That is one of the drawbacks to ABOs, ad set budgets. I like to think of ABOs or ad set budgets like driving a car with a manual transmission, okay, stick shift. So you actually have to shift the gears yourself. You have to turn things off when they're not working. You have to scale things up when they are working. It's not going to do it for you. So I feel like when you want to take more control back from the algorithm, if it's not behaving properly, then you do ad set budgets. You set the budgets. You turn things off when they're not working. You scale things when they are working. So the other nice thing about ABOs, ad set budgets, is you can introduce new ad sets into this campaign because they're not algorithmically linked. They're not competing for spend. What you do in one ad set does not necessarily affect the other ad sets. Okay, so I like to optimize at the ad level now in ad set budget campaigns because I don't have to worry about this domino effect we were talking about earlier. You can simply turn off an ad if it's not working, and it's going to be kind of contained to that ad set. Okay, so that's essentially everything that I wanted to talk about in terms of CBO versus ABO, campaign budget versus ad set budget. What I've found is both work. They're both tools. You know, in some ad accounts, for whatever reason, I see that campaign budgets work better. And then in others, I see that ad set budget campaigns work better. So I just go with whatever works better. It's really up to you as to how much control you want to give to the algorithm. If you want to just let the algorithm do its thing, let it rip, do campaign budgets. If you want to be more scientific and you decide, you shift the gears, then do ad set budgets. But ultimately, I think they're both completely valid ways of doing it. There's no right or wrong way per se of doing this. I think there are best practices okay? But in general, I think they both work. So it's up to you to test both and see what works best for your situation, your personality, and your style of running ads. So I hope that was helpful, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks. All right, you guys, that's it for today's video. I hope that cleared up any confusions you might have. If you have any questions about this video, make sure to drop them below. I'm answering every comment. And if you want to get more guidance on your meta ads journey, make sure to check out my meta ads community called Meta Ads Mastery on School. The price of this group is going to be increasing several times in 2026, so join now to get grandfathered in at our lowest rate. In this group, we have courses, guides, and you also get access to me to ask questions anytime. We also have weekly calls where we're discussing the absolute latest that's working across the platform. So if that interests you, join now, and I'll see you inside. Take care, everybody.